you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time,
Good morning and welcome to the July 18th edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. First of all, we'd like to start off by saying thank you for listening, and we do appreciate that. And if you would like to be a participant in today's program, and we would love for you to do that, here are the numbers that you can call. 516-453-9921. And for a question or comment, just press the number 1 button and get in line, and when it's recognized, you will be called. And you can give your or ask your question, and we will go from there. If you are a first-time caller, you can still press the number. Make sure you give the call screener your name and tell the call screener that you are a first-time caller, and we have something set up very special for you. You can also ask Mr. Fuller a question if you Gmail me, and that address is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Chances are it will not be read today because I have a backlog of Gmails. And keep in mind, when you do send it a Gmail, it will be read, but it's contingent on the phone calls. If we get many phone calls, then the chances are diminished. But if we don't have that many telephone calls, then your Gmail will be read in the order that it came. So don't worry, I have them, but they are there. Just that's for those who do not understand how that process works. You're not being ignored. It's just that the phone calls come first. You got to get those out. You can also join the conversation on Blog Talk by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to click on programs, and when you do that, then you want to click on shows. Then when you click on shows, you want the Produce Justice show, and when you click that on, then the chat room is available for you to get in, and you can join the chat. I would caution you, though, do not use the chat room to ask me a question to ask Mr. Fuller. That's not going to happen. But occasionally some good remarks are made in the chat room, and I will select something out and put it forth so that it can be addressed by Mr. Fuller. But normally the phone calls and the Gmail are primarily the way that you get in contact with the show. The featured on the show is the books that Mr. Fuller has, which you can get by going to producejustice.com, producejustice.com. All of the books are in. No issues on that, so you should not have any problems in getting the books. Okay, I believe that's all the house cleaning that I have to do right at the moment. Yes, okay. So we'll do this. First of all, let's say good morning to Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. 18th of July, Mr. Fuller, the segment that we have, you know what it is. It's called The Thoughts and Expressions on the Mind of Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, what is on your mind for this day, July the 18th, 2023?
Well, it's basically what's on my mind all the time, but I'm going to make it real brief so I can get to the questions, because there's so many people who may have the questions. But the basic thing I want to keep emphasizing, black people worldwide should minimize all contact. All contact. I keep repeating that over and over again. We are toxic. We are loaded with poison, all of us. And the evidence shows it. So we should minimize any contact with any other person, particularly black people, because only white people will put up with so much of black people's nonsense. That the only time we contact anyone for any reason, it's got to be for solving a problem. And without any shouting or cursing or anything like that, it's got to be about thoughtful, methodical problem solving. That's all. That's the only reason black people should talk to each other at all. Just hanging out and having abstract conversation and just, well, this is something to do. Being folksy, that should be off the charts until these problems are all solved. That's how long it should last. We're in a war, so we should act like it. This is no time for anything dealing with frivolity. Just on one thing alone, and that is the high murder rate among black people. We just wring our hands on that and then find something to giggle about. Always looking for something to giggle about. The giggling should be over, period, until we solve all of these problems, or at least half of them. So we should minimize, as a textbook for victims of racism says, minimize all contact. That's by phone or anything else, unless you have something constructive to say. And after you finish saying something of constructive value, something that absolutely needs to be said, get off the phone or break contact with the person that you're in the presence of. Because if we go over past that, talking about the constructive things or doing something that's constructive together, if we run out of constructive things to do and get in what you call dead time, we don't handle it well. We need to admit that to ourselves and to each other. We do not handle dead time very well. We immediately get into something that's going to lead to some type of hostility. And so that's what I have to say this morning, to cut it short. I mean, this is imperative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, it's going to be lonely, but it's a whole lot worse things than being lonely, because the gunfire is not working.
Mm-hmm.
So make every contact constructive, and everybody, after they make that contact, you will feel a lot better, and your problems will be solved, because that's what you were talking about, solving problems. You're not talking about solving problems. You're not really talking about anything that you should ever be talking about. And this is for the entire foreseeable future. That should be a part of your daily code, nightly code, and on and on and on. So that's all I'm going to have to say about that and get to the question.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Brewer, and thank you very much. Last week a caller called in and mentioned something to you and asked you something about your marriage and so forth. And if I'm not correct, if I am correct, and I do want you to correct me if I am wrong or misunderstood this, but in this system of racism, white supremacy, a black person cannot be married, or there's no such thing as marriage for a black person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the code calls them care mates. There are people who do care about you, and apparently that is someone who you would call a wife, a husband, or a spouse, all the different words you have for that, the person that you're so-called married to. Mm-hmm. But even though you've gone through the ceremony, the white supremacists do not allow marriages, period.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the reason for it. I mean, and so you don't call it that except when people who are not familiar with the codified way of talking about it, you can use the term, but then if you're on a first name basis with the person, you tell them what the code says about that.
Yes, sir.
No black person can be married in the system of white supremacy. The white supremacists just do not allow black marriages to function.
Yes.
They really don't allow it.
Okay. Now, knowing what you know now and have learned right now, because this person did ask you, about your marriage, knowing what you know now with the compensatory concept, would you be married again?
Well, it depends on the extent of which I think that I can take on a care mate, and that care mate takes me on. Absolutely. Yes, because, just because the white supremacists are opposed to it, the code does say that you avoid it. I mean, if you don't make it, don't think you can make it work. And most likely, if it's a so-called black marriage in this day and time, it's not going to work. I mean, because the white supremacists are committed for that not to even happen. They consider a black person talking about I'm married as a joke. I mean, how can you be married and you're a black male and you're married? You can't take care of a wife. You can't take care of yourself. You're a baby. And whatever black female you get tied up with, she's a baby. So babies can't take care of anybody. Because in the system of white supremacy, you depend on the white supremacists for everything that you're going to get. So you're not in charge of anything. A husband or a wife is supposed to be in charge of something. It's supposed to be able to say, well, this is my position, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. In the system of white supremacy, you're prisoners of war.
Yes, sir.
And prisoners of war are not really married.
Okay.
The marriage is over when you became prisoners of war. And every black person on the planet now is a prisoner of war. You were born in prison. So prisoners can't take care of anybody. They're being taken care of.
Okay. Alrighty.
No such thing as independence for black people on the planet Earth in 2023.
In 2023,
at this moment. Not one.
Okay. Alrighty, let's go to the phone lines, and we're going to go, New York is hitting it hard again. Let's go to the dollar with the holler in New York. Dollar Bill, we have you on. Wait a minute. There we go. We got you on, Dollar Bill. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Come on, Dollar Bill. Come on with it.
How are you this morning, gentlemen?
We're good, sir.
All right. So listen up. All right. So, Mr. Fuller, you made all those statements, and that was really cool, and it was profound. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Fuller, I think that there needs to be some strength in numbers. That's what they say. I mean, that's the only way we can win this war. You got to have the numbers. You got to have the money. I'm going to that question, and remember, everybody, we need to start directing our money to better things, like Mr. Fuller said. Only buy what you need, because they're trying to keep the money from us. And I'm going to that word money today in your book, Mr. Fuller. You say on page 241 in the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, page 241, I should say, and you talk about money. And I have always been asking you, or I have been asking you, about what else can we do besides the code, because I'm saying that we need something other than the code. And my thing is money. But you always say, well, they can change the money, they can do this with the money, and blah, 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 so it's really not about money. But in your book, I'm just going to read a little bit. It says, use this word money to apply to any person, creature, or thing that is used in exchange for whatever is regarded as being the same value or of greater value in the exchange. When others use this word, ask for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. And then you go through it. But then you move on to money masters, and you describe money masters as the white supremacists, how they control money and how they keep us from money. In your notes, it says the white supremacists speak and act to guarantee that non-white people do not have enough of what is needed that will allow them to be able to depend on each other. And then you go on to other illustrations or instances where you're saying that they're controlling the money and keeping it from us. So my question to you today, Mr. Fuller, is what do you say is needed besides your code to create a system of justice? And I want to stay on the line, Mr. Bobby. Have a great day, everybody.
All righty. All right, Mr. Fuller.
What is needed beside a code? Nothing. You have to have a code for everything that works. That's all a code is. Does it work? A code either works for you or against you. So you want a code. Code just means a way of doing things that always works for you in the most constructive manner. The way you talk to people, the way people talk to you, you always, every contact you make with things, animals, creatures, money, it's either working for you or against you. A code means you've got to figure out how to make everything that you make contact with. Just picking up a pencil. How can I make this pencil work for me and not against me? Otherwise, why am I picking up this pencil? See, that's what a code means. Everything is going to either work for you, or it's going to be neutral, or it's going to work against you. So if it's working neutral, that means it's killing time. And you only have so much time here on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So all that the time that you have, that's money. You've heard people use the expression, time is money. So how you use your time, if you're doing something constructive, anything that you're doing that's constructive, that's not some type of leading to some type of disaster, is money well spent. Time is money. People have said that. That's a cliche. And you say, time is money. I mean, time is just time. I mean, yes, but if you're using it to get a constructive result, those two words are very important. Constructive result.
Yes, sir.
Then you can call it anything you want to. Every time you do anything that gets a constructive result, something that works for you and not against you, that's money. Then we're just going to look at money as just something, with somebody's picture on it and a number or two. And then you go around doing things, this and that. Look at the things that you're doing.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Dollar Bill. Just a reminder, callers, particularly not Mr. Fuller, but the person in the area code, looks like it's 202. Please give the call screener your name so that I can recognize you when it's your turn. Okay, going to Milwaukee. Get ready, Corey. Let me see. Put this over there. Okay, Corey in Milwaukee. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please, with your question.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, expanding on what you just said with the previous caller's question, is it counter-racist code for us to us as black people to do our best to exchange our time, our use of time and energy for things that we need from one another, and try our best to use this as our form of money.
Absolutely. And the white supremacists are aware of this. This is why the white supremacists, I remember a time when, because there used to be an expression, if a Negro is around, and they use the N-word, a white man is not supposed to get his hands dirty. He looks around and spots whatever black person that happens to be walking past, and he looks, and there's some work that's got to be done. That the cliche was that white man would call that black person over here and say, "Hey, boy, do this, do that." And there was a time when that was the way it worked. Move this, move that. Why? Because I'm a white man. Now, I can do the work because I taught everybody else how to do the work. All of my slaves, and the work that I wanted done. And the craftsmanship, I taught them. They didn't know nothing after they became under me as a slave. So I taught them all of this. So there's anything where you're going to get your white hands dirty, and you got a black person just passing by, that black person is supposed to do it. That's the rule under the system of white supremacy. So that was almost like gospel. So black people learn to do a whole lot by having to do that. Brick masons and architects and just about everything, where you just might get your hands dirty. So the white supremacists, thinking ahead at a certain point, they noticed that. So they said, "Hey, don't teach a black person how to do anything that's going to be worthy of doing." That's so much. And don't put them on any kind of machines or anything. They'll learn to do it. Next thing you know, they'll know more about how to do it and do it better than you're doing it, and you're doing it. We can't have that, so we have to limit that. So in answer to the question, lots of black people, like one black person knows how to do the carpentry work, and I've seen this, actually witnessed that with my own eyes. Another black person knows painting, and another black person knows electrical work. Well, rather than go around hiring people to do all this because they don't have the money, and the white supremacists limit the amount of money that black people will have, so black people start building houses on weekends. And I've actually seen black people get together and do that. And they'll just working on the weekend because they were working somewhere else for the white people all during the week. But on Saturday morning, they would get up and they weren't gang banging or none of that because they were too busy all up and down the block. Tap, the banging that you would hear would be hammers and nails. And black people would be exchanging what they knew. One black person's, they'd be joking around and all like that. But one black person is up on the ladder painting. Another black person is down on the first floor doing some hammering and nailing because he's a carpenter, he or she. And in a few months, they had a shotgun house or some type of house, sometimes very sophisticated housing, and that went on and on and on. They exchanged what they knew how to do, using scrap lumber and stuff like that, because you would ask, well, where would they get the materials? They get the materials from the job that they was on, where sometimes master would let them have the materials because they said, hey, this project is over, and I've already signed the contract, and all these other materials I'm going to have to haul it away because I'm not going to use it for anything soon. I got to store it somewhere. So let these black people who do all the work anyway, let them take it. And just get it off my property because I got to put other stuff here. And that's how it works.
Yes, sir.
An explanation to the caller. But black people now don't know how to do much of anything because the white supremacists start steering us away from that. I understand in the place that we call so-called South Africa that for quite a while, white people wouldn't allow a black person to operate machinery. They say, you don't teach them how to operate machines. That's a white man's job. You teach them how to do the lifting and loading, but don't teach them how, because they will get better at it, and you will get worse at it. So the boss of a project would get to the place where he would know as much about the work being done as the person doing the work. And a lot of people in the old days have seen that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, the person who was supposed to be telling the black person what to do wouldn't know what to tell them because they had gotten out of the habit of doing anything constructive, but sitting around bossing, hands on the hip. So the workers actually got to work out all the details of doing a job and could actually make suggestions that the so-called boss man didn't know how to do himself. Where did you learn that, boy? Well, I learned it by doing it and getting better at it and learning how to do it quicker and more efficiently. And so the white supremacists said, oh, no, from now on we can teach these black people to go to school, but we'll just teach them how to talk. We ain't going to teach them how to do nothing that makes sense.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Corey. Let me do this because we do have a new caller, but let me do this before I get to the new caller. Again, thank you, Corey. Now, I'm going to, not deliberately, but I'm going to mess this person's name up, but this is a regular caller to the chat, I guess you could say. But pointed out something interesting. It could be happening in your neighborhood. Task felt number 7. I know I messed it up. Anyway, it says this. While picking up litter last Sunday morning, I found 10 fake $50 bills that were spaced out for about 100 yards. I thought that it was ridiculous but sinister, being that it's summer and children could have found it and attempted to use it. People should look after what they consider their neighborhood. Yep, 10 individual $50 bills of counterfeit or fake money found. And I'm glad our kids or anyone else's didn't find or try to make a purchase with it. George Floyd was killed because of fake money. Thank you. Session Frat Hits number 7. Thank you for bringing that out. That could be happening in neighborhoods all across this concept. Anyway, before we get to our new caller, William in D.C., it's time for a station break. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, you know the numbers, but for those who are new, here's the number, 516-453-9921. And a question or comment, just press the number 1 button and you will get in line. And if you are a new caller, do the same thing, but make sure that you give the call screener your name so that I can give you a proper introduction, as I'm getting ready to do with William from D.C. You can also shoot me a Gmail by doing this. The address is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Again, it probably will not be read today, but it goes in stack in order. So at some point in time, it will be read, and then I will let you know when it happens. As a matter of fact, I will give you a symbol to let you know that I have received it. And lastly, you can join the chat room, as many have already. And all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to click on where it says programs. Once you hit the programs, then the shows will come up, and you want the Produce Justice Show. That's the Produce Justice Show, and then you get that. And then I think to the right-hand side, at least on my screen it is, you hit that, and then you're in the chat room. The chat room is available for you to get into. Okay, in a little while, we're going to have Mr. Fuller discuss his books that you can get by going to producejustice.com. All of them are in, so you'd have no excuse. And thank you for that. Chris Miller, thank you. He got that. He got another book, and he told me he emailed me, Without Sanctuary. Very compelling, very hard story. That's true about lynching here in this concept. Anyway, thank you, Chris, and for doing it. I hope that you're still learning. Okay. New caller alert. Get ready, William, from D.C. We're getting ready to tune you in or clue you in here as soon as I get this over here. Hello, Anthony from Nashville. Okay, let's do this. Okay, Chris, you are on, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and what is your question? Excuse me, William. Yes, there you go.
My question to you guys, when it comes to the Creator, does he have an adversary, which we know as Satan, the devil? Do you think that's the driving force behind white supremacy?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Well, the only thing I really know about the system of white supremacy is that apparently, from what I can put together, and from everything I've read and heard and witnessed, that somebody thought of an idea of getting things done to their advantage, and they put that idea to work. And that idea was, suppose all the world's business was done on the basis of what color somebody's skin was. And that turned out to be an idea called the system of white supremacy in capital letters. It's just a way of getting things done to your convenience and somebody else's inconvenience. And people have always, in this evil way, many people have selected to do that. It's just a way of stealing, in a way of what you call in slang terms, getting over. And somebody thought of another way of doing it. They had different words for it. Some people call it communism. Some people call it capitalism. Some people call it royalism, which, George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and all those people, they said, we got to fight against this English royalty. I mean, where the king is always right. He ain't never wrong about nothing. So we don't believe in that. They're taking advantage of it. These are white people dealing with other white people. And the Roman Empire, they say the emperor doesn't do anything but just sit up there and give out orders. That's royal. That's imperialism, they called it. They got different names for it, but it's the same basic thing. So somebody thought up a system, said, why not do all the business of the world on the basis of what color somebody is? And we'll say, the darker your skin, that means that you have less say-so than anybody else. Somebody's always telling you what to do, and you can't tell nobody else what to do. And why not set up a system like that? And the lighter your skin color is, the better. Okay? And if you're classified as white, that's the top of the pyramid. And so you think that'll work? Now, I'm just imagining somebody had this conversation because it came true. And it might have been just two people that just came up with the idea. Do you think it'll work? Naturally, they wanted something they thought will work. Say, well, we don't know. We can try it. Say, well, you think people will go for it? Say, yeah, well, the people at the top of it, yeah, they're going to go for it because it's going to be convenient. So they tried it, and it turned out to be the most powerful idea that people ever conceived for misusing people and making a whole lot of progress that other people couldn't make at the same time. But you could do the same thing through a system of justice. They say, yeah, but that's real tiresome. That'll wear you out. Because it calls for a whole lot of debate about getting things done and all like that. If we set up a system of white supremacy, that's dictatorship. Anybody talk back to you. You're a white man or you're a white woman, you make a decision, everybody jumps. And if we can pull that off, that'll be a gold mine. And they did. And they pulled it off in record time because the royalist system that they were going back and forth with each other, calling themselves and even using color there, but as a slang. They call it blue bloods. Well, nobody has blue blood. So the people who were supposed to be the servants would notice that. Say, your blood ain't blue. Say, why should I listen to you? You telling me that you're a blue blood, and I should do what you say do. I don't see no blue blood. So they'll fight about that. That's white people.
Mm-hmm.
All right? They say, well, you can see it through our veins and whatnot. I mean, sometimes our veins look blue on account of the whiteness. And they say, no, you're running the game. You're trying to get away with murder.
Yeah. All
but
right.
The white thing, the white skin and the dark skin, that became the standard for the world, and it still is as we speak now.
Yes, sir. All right, William, don't be a stranger. Thank you for your call. Okay, let's go up to Pennsylvania, and the man hasn't been on for a long time. Get ready, Stan. Stan the man. You are
yes, sir.
On. There you go.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for welcoming me back, Mr. Bobby. Good morning to you, and good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'll be as brief as I possibly can be. But first of all, Mr. Fuller, you really touched on something when you was talking about black people knowing, quote, unquote, too much on the job. I had a job interview where I essentially gave the interviewers a master class on the very complicated machinery in which I operate, and they were, like, just blown away at how much I knew. And the interviewer even stated that he didn't know what I had just taught him. And they convened about my job application and all, and they came back and they turned me down. And I always thought that was very interesting. But so thank you for bringing that up. It just kind of confirmed some things for me. But the question that I have is I wanted to say that I just recently read James Baldwin's book, Notes of a Native Son. And in that book, he said that basically America wants everyone to be the same. And additionally, I was just coming back from a trip abroad, and I was looking at the entertainment system on the aircraft, and it was a documentary about the late comedian John Belushi, and how a lot of people thought that he was Italian because of his name, but he was actually Albanian. And because of this, he was actually embarrassed to be Albanian. He was embarrassed of his father's accent, that his grandmother never really learned to speak English, and his friends said that he never even let them in his home when they grew up. And so the question I have for you, Mr. Fuller, is that we always talk about white supremacy and the effect that it has on black people, but what does this country that we call America, what effect? It appears that it has an effect on white people as well. And I guess it's obvious, but can you explain what the pressure that white people feel in this system? And I would like to stay on the line for your question, your answer.
Okay. All righty. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, well, it's been my observation, and I've actually seen it, that, in the military, when I was around white people many, many decades ago, sometimes white people who would be trying to do something, they couldn't do it very well. Other white people would be saying, and there was an expression for it, you're acting like a Negro, all right? Only they'd use the N-word. They say, stop acting like that. You're a white man. You're acting like one of them savages, one of those ne'er-do-wells, one of those don't know nothing that makes sense. I mean, stop acting like that. You're embarrassing everybody. Everybody, meaning white people, the rest of the soldiers. They don't act like that. They be whispering to themselves. But see, I knew what they were saying. Stop acting like that. Stop acting like that. That was drilled into them by their parents before they even got in the Army. All right? Yeah. And that was the standard expression. I mean, hey, wake up. Act like a white man, which is the only real man. You're acting like one of those things, one of those animals. Stop acting like that. And so a lot of white people would say, well, no, I'm just, I'm in pain, and, things are being done to me, and, and things are not working out. And I can't get along with my family and all like that. Well, yeah, but you're a white man. You're not supposed to be acting like that. Are you crazy? Look in the mirror. You're a white man. You're acting like one of these animals. You're not an animal, you're a white man. And so, if I understand what the caller is saying, yeah, that's gospel. That's what white supremacy is all about. Don't act like one of those things. You can't really call them people. Just look at the way they act. Look at the things that they do. If you ain't standing over them like you're standing over, you got to stand over them with a whip, like you're training an animal. Go here, go there, and crack that whip, and shoot that gun. Because they ain't nothing but animals anyway. And you can fast forward to the movie Godfather 1, where the person actually says that. That was in 1972. Where you say, hey, we're going to sell drugs to just the black people. We'll keep the trade among the colors. They're nothing but animals anyway. Let them lose their souls. We're not going to sell it to our own children. But see, when you put out poison, that's the law of compensation, which is part of the title of the book, my textbook. The law of compensation is you spread poison, you'll get some of it on you. So now a lot of white people have gotten confused because they're told one thing, but at the same time they're also, by what people do, they're doing something else because they see their elders doing it. And you telling me about this, that, and the other. What you saying don't use drugs, sell it to the black people, but now you're using it. You're using your own product. And from what I've heard about, about dope dealers, one thing you don't want to do is use. If you're in the drug business, you don't use the stuff yourself, or you're finished.
Yes. All righty. Thank you, Stand the Man, and welcome. I guess I could say welcome back, but glad you're here. Mr. Fuller, let's talk about your book here, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept that you can get by going to producejustice.com. Speak on that for a few moments, please, sir.
Yes, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com, and it's supposed to be a guide for the individual victim of racism. It's just a guide. It won't cover everything, but it's supposed to make suggestions about what to do in different situations and what not to do. Just page after page of trying to understand, first of all, try to understand white supremacy, which is the greatest government that the world has ever seen, the most powerful government. It's an evil government. It's not the American government. That's another thing. The book tells you how to use words. You never accuse an American of being a racist. That adds to confusion. You accuse a racist of being a racist. That will always cut down a whole lot of confusion and a whole lot of discussion. Once you mix it up with anything, talking about Russia practices racism, that's impossible. It's impossible for anybody to practice racism except a racist. That's the label. And a racist in the system of white supremacy is always a white person. Why? Because that's the only system of government on the planet. All other governments are just labels. Tribal government. They can say, well, we're a government. Well, what's the name of your tribe? And they give you some kind of name. And the tribe consists of 15 people. Well, you got a whole lot of tribes, millions of them, literally millions of tribes. But now you got a nation called the system of white supremacy. So the textbook for victims of white supremacy says this is the nation that you are addressing. And I can't get people, even though having this program, I keep telling people, stop saying America practices racism or even implying that. That's impossible. Why? Because America doesn't exist. And people say, well, Fuller can say that, but I'm not going to say that. People think I'm crazy and all like that. No. You could say it in any court of law. And when they get through talking for 40 days and 40 nights in any court, they will say, well, in America, when you come right down to it, America is a concept. It's an idea that has never been realized. Everybody should want to be an American. Now, the textbook, since I'm talking about what's in the textbook, and everybody should want to be an African, and everybody should want to be an Asian. Why? Because these words mean the same thing, if they mean anything at all. People who practice justice. And since nobody can practice justice in the system of white supremacy, that's impossible, then nobody can be an American, an African, or an Asian. And the evidence shows it. I'm talking about if you were going before the Supreme Court and you was presented with these arguments, that's what they call them, before the Supreme Court. Do Americans actually exist? And after, like I said, 40 days or 40 years of heated debate, they'd have to say, finally, those 9 people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, well, no, it doesn't, in answer to the question. We're trying to make an America. Well, lots of people claim that. And you can say the same thing for an Africa or an Asia. Because one thing is one characteristic that they all have, if they did exist.
Mm-hmm.
They don't allow people to be mistreated. They believe in justice, and they prove it. Because in order to have justice, you can't have anybody being mistreated, and nobody does that. You got mistreatment all over the world. Mistreatment of a so-called husband with a wife. So as long as you got mistreatment, you don't have an American or an Asian or an African nowhere on this planet. Because you got to have a situation where nobody mistreats anybody. And the people who need help the most get the most constructive help. That's the definition, according to the textbook for victims of white supremacy, of the word justice. You've got to guarantee those two things. Because if you don't have justice, you can have any kind of label. What you are is a mistreater if you don't have justice. And we all participate in mistreating the environment. That's correctness. So we don't have justice or correctness nowhere on the planet. So all these labels, American, African, Asian, they don't mean anything. You either have guaranteed justice or you haven't. And nobody has guaranteed it, because that's impossible in the system of white supremacy, which is the only government worthy of the term government, according to what I have written in the textbook. I'm talking about how to use words now and prove what you're saying to be the truth. If anybody digs into it, they're defeated before they even start. Because this is a different way of saying things that need to be said that are not being said.
And we can get the book by going to
producejustice.com. It's for victims, the individual victim, what to do on the job, what to say on the job, what questions to ask. That's for the non-white people who consider themselves to be victims of white supremacy. So if you don't think that you're a victim of white supremacy, then you don't buy the book. So
okay.
It's a pretty steep book, price on the book, on all of the textbooks, and very poorly written. But I had to get it out here because it seems like everybody was missing, first of all, what the problem really is. That's what it seemed like to me. I wanted somebody to write a book, understand the problem. That's the first order of solving any kind of problem. You're talking about a problem, you don't understand how to talk about it. Talking about Americans, practice racism. When you say that, it means you don't understand anything about racism. You've wiped yourself clean right there.
Yes, sir.
So the book is supposed to correct all this.
Okay. All righty. And again, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And when you get the book, please read it. Please read it. And understand, you're not going to understand, well, I'll just put it this way. When I got mine, I didn't understand everything right away, but I kept on reading, and then, I don't know, I think one day on the program, Mr. Fuller, the light came on. But that's me. But you have to read it to understand it and question, because you always say to ask questions, and then the answer comes to you. Yes. Okay. All righty. Again, the number to call in, and glad you did. Don't forget to give the call screener your name, particularly those with the prefix of 480. Don't have your name down here, but call this number, 516-453-9921, and get in line, as Anthony has from Nashville. Okay, here we go, Anthony. See if we can get you in. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, Anthony, you're on. Good morning.
All right, good morning. You can take me off the air after I get done, Mr. Bobby.
Okay.
I have a brief VGQ, and I have a question for Mr. Fuller. Now, my VGQ is, back in 2021, I had a discussion with a suspected white supremacist, and I asked him straight up, I said, what was the whole reason behind racism? And he said competition. He just said a flat-out statement and just said competition. So in the revised edition of the code book on page 210, on the top of the page, it says, think of ways to get people to abandon the so-called white lifestyle, which is competition and domination based on racist, motivated deceit and violence. And I just want to ask Mr. Fuller, where was he able to find that assessment?
Okay, Mr.
Make
Fuller?
that assessment.
The question is what now? What was I able to?
How was you able to make this assessment?
Make that assessment?
That statement.
By observing,
yes,
by observing the behavior of people. White supremacy is not mysterious, but we have made it mysterious. I mean, by not just looking at what people actually do, not just listening to what they say, just look around you and put two and two together in all areas of activity, in economics. First of all, ask questions about, well, what is economics? It's the use of time and energy. It's not just money. How people use their time, how people use their energy. That's basic economics. That's what you come into the world with, time and energy. And when you run out of time and energy, that's non-economical because you're no longer here. That's what you came into the world with, time and energy. And when that runs out, time and energy, you're dead. So that's basic economics. You have that. You come into the world with basic economics. Not money, because your time and energy is or is not, depends on what you want to call it, that's the real money. So you try to keep your energy and try to keep your time going. That's all you're doing the whole time you're here. And you try to do it conveniently. And you do that with knowledge and understanding. You come here knowing nothing, but you gain knowledge and understanding. So you suspend your time and energy, try to learn all you can. There's no such thing as being educated until you learn everything that needs to be known. And that's the kind of thinking that the book itself is supposed to help you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope, and like I do I have to tell people, watch Neely Fuller too. That's a part of it, because you will ask a question, and somehow he will slide off of the question. Don't let me get away with that. Now, I'm not doing it deliberately, but the white supremacists do it deliberately. They know how to get around your question. It'll sound like they answered your question, and they talk for an hour and didn't answer your question at all. They do this all the time. I've seen it pulled. So don't let anybody do that. Just always get them focused on it. That's not the question I asked.
Mm-hmm.
Say that to me. Because Mr. Bobby and everybody else, I want to interject that. See, this is a part of having a code. Watch out for the person that's doing all this talking, but they didn't answer the question. Now, I do it because my mind wanders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling the truth about that.
Okay.
But don't let me do it, because other people, you know, they'll do it.
Yes, sir.
You know, they'll do it deliberately. So don't let me do it. Don't let anybody do that. And let them know. Hold up your hand in a class or anything. Say, sir, ma'am, are you, put it in the form of a question, are you answering my question?
Yes, sir. All righty. All righty, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you for listening. You're correct, Mr. Fuller. I would just say this. I usually do not use names, but I think it was on The View or Good Morning America, or one of those programs. They had South Carolina Representative Tim Scott on, and someone asked him a question. And right before their eyes, what he did was he really did not answer the question, but he changed the question to fit what he wanted to say and answered what he wanted to say. But if you didn't catch it, you would think that he did answer the question, but he didn't. He did not answer the question.
Lots of people do that.
Yes.
And the white supremacists are experts at it.
Yes.
They say this black person went away grinning, thinking that I answered this question. I didn't come nowhere close to answering this question, but I sounded good.
You sounded good.
You know what I mean? Watch out for that, folks. Watch out for it. That's a part of the code book.
All right.
It says, always stay focused on what your question was and make sure that that person is answering your question.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that concludes the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We thank you for listening. Those who have to go, hopefully you will come back and hear us next week. But for those who will stick and stay, don't go away, because we have another hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller that will commence in 5 seconds. Okay, welcome back to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We would love to have you be a participant in today's programming, and you can do so by calling this number, 516-453-9921, and make sure that you press the number 1 button. Tell the call screener your name so that I can see it on the board, and when it's your turn, we will get to you. And if you are a first-time caller, be sure to tell that to the call screener. They will give me your name, and we have something very special for you that you will also be heard. Now, you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. for a question. Now, I would not really use that right away because the callers come first, so your Gmail will be stacked up with the others, and trust me on this one, I have quite a few in there, but as time permits, then we're able to get to the Gmails to answer. So your Gmail will not be ignored. It's just that the callers I've been told that the callers come first, so that's what we're going to do, the callers. But you can do that. And lastly, you can get into the chat room, and they have been fabulous today. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on programs, and the program that you want is, once you click that on, you go to shows, and you want the Counter-Racist Code Show, or Produce Justice. Yeah, that's what it is. Produce Justice Show. You get that, and then when you click on that, the chat room becomes available, and you can get in there, and I mean, they is smoking. They are smoking real good in there, real good chats. So we thank you for that. Oh, yeah, you learned something in there. In fact, we are all really still learning. Okay, and for those, particularly from the West Coast, you're tuning in, thank you, Deontay and Robin from Arizona. Thank you. David, we got you coming up. ProduceJustice.com for the books. Please make sure that you get the book, the guide. You may not agree with everything that's in there, but these are suggestions on what to do in this war that we are in. Okay, I'm going to try to get some information out. I'll ask when Mr. Fuller will be on the Carl Nelson Show. Since we're in July, I'll ask about that and see. And when he's on, I'll pass that information on, and hopefully I will get it correct this time. So we'll find out. Okay, I believe that's all the house cleaning for this particular hour. Okay, David in Ohio. Looks like the Dayton area. But anyway, David, here we go. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Hello? Hey, how you doing, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller?
Yes,
excellent
sir,
show, excellent show. Yes, my question for Mr. Fuller today is, there was a case, the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing here, and the judge took the case. Don't quote me on this real. I'm sure, but she took the case, but then she dismissed the case to make sure. So I think it was 3 victims. They were 109 years old, and she dismissed the case. And I haven't seen the answer, but my question is to Mr. Fuller is, can you have a long conversation with a person or organization, and you're trying to get them to answer your question, but they never take action?
You're trying to get a person to answer your question, but they never do what?
They never take action. They answered your question. As a matter of fact, they answered your question, but they never took action on your question.
Oh, and then you ask a question, why haven't you taken action on the question that I had? Was the situation where, according to the code now, was your situation where you asked the person to do something? See, now we'll go to page 171 and 172 of the code book. What do you want me to do if it's something they want you to do? Or if you want them to do something, you ask them to do it. And they either do it or they don't. And if they don't do it, then you ask, why haven't you done what you promised to do? And just wait on the answer. It's a very simple formula, and it's guaranteed to work. Just one question right after another. All you have to do is just keep asking questions about what it is you wanted done. If that was the initial question, you wanted something done. Can you do this? What is it, it's something that I want you to do. So you ask the person, can you do what it is that I want done? Are you willing to do it? Or can you do it? Yes or no. Get that straight first. Mm-hmm. Just know what questions to ask and have 1,000 questions. See, stay away from making statements. Don't start making accusations and all like that. You didn't say, you didn't do what you said you was going to do. You don't start off like that. You say, why have you not done what you said you were going to do at the time you said that you were going to do it? And don't break into the answer. Never break into the answer. That's a rigid part of the code. Never help them to answer the question. You don't help them. Let them answer the question. Mm-hmm. Sir, ma'am, and always be polite. Don't sound like you're making an accusation. Just say, I'm seeking information. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why, if the person says it should have been done by Thursday, that was the agreement, you just simply, when you talk to the person, pick up your cell phone or whatever you have and say, did you not say, get an understanding first, that today was the day when I called, you have the work done? Did you say that? And if the person said, yes, I said it, then you say, well, do you have it done? So you just have the next question. Don't say that you lied to me or nothing like that. No, don't say that. Don't ever say that.
Yeah.
Just ask another question. Why wasn't it done? They said, well, I was in the hospital. I was on my way to getting it done, but I had a car wreck, and I got my leg in a cast. And I don't know when I'll have it done. They might add that. Now you got your answer.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty, David, thank you. And I've never seen you call before, but tell you what, hey, don't be a stranger. Thank you to the program. Mr. Fuller, you were speaking about, you use this many times on various programs that you and I have been a part of about being a so-called American. And then a question came up. It said, Mr. Bobby, could you please lead Mr. Fuller to a document or a part of Mr. Fuller's book about how there is no such thing as an American? He was also just mentioning the U.S. Supreme Court in this concept regarding how even they will/would have to admit this idea/concept. Do you know where that's at in your book, or is it in your book, or what?
No, it isn't.
Or a document? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it isn't. And it's not like that. I didn't use, I tried to stay away from localizing,
okay,
on the map of the world, the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is worldwide. And that's a focus that should be kept in mind all the time. It's the most powerful government that ever appeared among people on this planet in the history, recorded history, of the world. The most powerful. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about some small operation on one side of town. We're talking about a world government. It's called the system of white supremacy. That's the name for it. And the other name for it is racism. It's the only expression of racism on the planet. Everybody of color is a victim of it. According to what? Neely Fuller? According to evidence. Everybody bows down of color. Everybody who has color in their skin takes second place, third place, fourth place in line behind the white supremacists and subject to their power. I'm not talking about all white people, because I don't know all white people. Don't say anything that you don't know. That's a part of the code.
Yes, sir.
But those who are white, the most powerful people on the planet, the smartest people on the planet, because you have to be smart if you're going to dictate to everybody else. You can't be what we call, quote, unquote, dumb.
Yes, sir.
Dumb people do not master over people who are smart. That just doesn't work. The evidence shows that nowhere.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to Robin in Arizona. My sister's name is Robin. We affectionately call her Rockin' Robin sometimes. But I don't know you well enough to call you that, so I'll just say Robin, call you by your name. Robin in Arizona, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Thank you for taking my call. So, Mr. Fuller, I was listening to a previously recorded broadcast of yours yesterday, and you said when you raise a question, the answer to that question starts gravitating toward the source of the question. And I find that to be true, especially in this instance for my call, because you kind of touched on my question, or one of my questions, just a few minutes ago with another caller. So my first question is, what would your response to the question, what is a man? What would your response to that question be?
A man is a person that manages. And in the system of white supremacy, black males are not allowed to be men. I'm not a man. I'm an elderly boy. And they call me that, or they used to my face. And they were telling the truth. I wasn't managing anything. I'm being managed. I've been managed ever since I was born. In fact, before I was born, when I was in my mother's womb, I was under the system of white supremacy. So I was born into a prison system called the system of white supremacy. One thing that is taken away from you when you are put in a prison is people who have been or who are still there know. What is a prison? What is it like? One of the things they take away is what most people would call your manhood. That's why even in that situation, most males, regardless of whom they are, white, non-white, of any age, they're steadily trying to prove their manhood while they're in prison, knowing full well that that's not what they are. They don't put it that way in the conversation. But you lose your manhood, your ability to manage. That's all it is. That's what manhood is. And black males particularly, they went through the period where they used the word dude and all like that. But before then, more than anybody on the planet, black males use that term, M-A-N. Hey, man, what's up, man? Where you going there, man?
Yeah.
See, we're trying to remind ourselves of something that we're not. But we're struggling to get to be that. And when we say, y'all better be quiet, here comes the man. Well, everybody knew what that meant.
Sure did.
Here comes a male who is white. Otherwise, you ain't talking about no man. Even if they're 15 years old. He's white. That's a man.
Okay.
So that 15-year-old white, what you call a white boy, I ain't paying no attention to that old silly white boy. We say that among ourselves. We don't say that to the white supremacists.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. I appreciate that answer. So my second question is, what are your thoughts on why many males classified as black blame the females classified as black for the problems facing the so-called black community?
What are the what now?
Okay. What are your thoughts on why many black males blame the problems that are facing the black community on the black female?
Well, what are the problems between males and black males and black females?
Yes, sir. So there's a lot of people, a lot of males, black males, who feel that most of the problems that are plaguing the black community are the results of single-parent homes, which are mostly female-run homes.
In other words,
I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we'll try to simplify the question. Black males accuse black females of being the problem.
Yes, sir.
Because black males know that they are weak. Black males have always hid behind the skirts of black females. That's why the code says, stop doing that. That's the codified approach. Why? Because the black female is not the problem of any black male, period. No black female is. We were so busy walking around in history, sticking out our chests about our tribe, or we are this and we are that, and telling the black female, barking orders at her, making her subordinate to him. Black males have always done that in recorded history. Of course, white people have done it among themselves too. But here's what. When the white supremacists invented a system called the system of white supremacy, those black males who were bossing black females no longer could do anything for the black female because he couldn't do anything for himself. And that's where we are now. But the black male will still try to hold on to the idea of, rather than regarding a black female as a partner within the prison called the system of white supremacy, he's still regarding her as some type of servant to him. And that's a huge mistake, because one thing is not true. The black female can't get nothing out of the black male because he ain't got nothing, including himself. And every black male at a gut level knows it. But he's walking around doing what? Being an actor. He ain't eligible, not eligible. And I'm going to say this flat out. This is the code. No black male is in a position to correctly dictate anything to any black female, drunk or sober. I'll just use that as an example. I mean, the best that he can ask her to do is just to be a partner in trying to work out some problems. Because the black male strutting around all through what we brag about our black history before the system of white supremacy, that's where we usually start, when we start talking about how proud we are, which no black male should ever say that. Ever let the word proud of anything. When we wound up to be in the shape that we're in now, this is solid code. In answer to your question, no black male has the correct outlook to start with on his position in this world, talking about the black female doing anything that she shouldn't be doing when he's not doing it, what he should be doing. We don't have that kind of license.
Okay.
And that those words should never come either directly or indirectly out of our mouths. We shouldn't even pretend to have any authority over the black female. The black female is under the system of white supremacy, just like he is.
Okay.
Equal partners, equal prisoners in the same prison, in the same cell. That's what we are. So all this trying to talk down to each other, that should stop.
That should stop.
Right this minute.
All right. Thank you, Robin from Arizona. A couple of points in the chat room. Justice Warrior said to the caller, it is not that black men blame all black women, just a certain subset of black women who have willingly chosen to follow the lead of the white supremacist female whose goal is to destroy the black family at the behest of her white man. Many black women are pro-abortion, pro-democrat, no matter what, pro-feminism, pro-ratchetness. Corrective action items says this. Any blaming that doesn't focus on the source of the problem, and parenthetically she put racism, white supremacy, is shadow boxing. What is shadow boxing, you might want to know? You got the book? You got the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept? Hear what Fuller has to say about that. I'm looking at the page right now. Right now, but I'm not going to read it. Get the book. It's in there. It's in there. All right, Robin, thank you so much for being a caller there. Let's go to Detroit. Nathan Detroit. That's not you, Deontay. I just think about the play I saw at the Ford Theater, Guys and Dolls. Nathan Detroit was a character. Deontay, you are on with Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Yes.
I wanted to ask two quick questions. The first question is, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., were you ever inspired by like Joe Louis, Hank Aaron, MLK, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, like those types of people? Were you inspired by them?
Well, I don't use the word inspired so much. I say I took notice of people who were saying things, and I learned things. Now, the learning, did it inspire me? Well, what inspired me more than anybody were the white supremacists themselves, because I knew that what they were doing was setting up a government that was not just. Once I became aware of that, everything else fell in place. I say I'm living in if you can call it living, I'm existing. That's how the code explains it. Under a government that never should have existed. And once I locked onto that, everything became an inspiration. Every time I look around me every day, and I just see the way black people behave, the way white people behave, in all areas of activity, the way people in general behave, and I say this should not be. And that is my inspiration. It's all of the above. Not only Malcolm X and whatnot, but all the people I'm looking at every day. There's people walking up and down the street. I look at people, what actually, cutting off the sound, you might say, like on television, and just look at what people actually do. I look at cars when they're going by. I look at people getting on the bus, and I ask questions like, where are those people going, getting on that tour bus? And what are they going to do when they get where they're going? See, it always comes down to the doing part. See, the saying part, people say a lot of things, so and a lot of things are very confusing about what people say. When people are talking, the talking gets confusing. Like even when I'm talking right now, that can be confusing. But when you look at what people actually do, like one professor out of Georgetown, a black one, many years ago, somebody told me, he said that they just turn the sound off and just watch people and what they do. Watch a drive-by shooting, and just watch and see what people actually do. Watch people when they're on vacation. What is a vacation? Ask these type of questions.
Mm-hmm.
See,
okay.
So when you pay attention to what people actually do, everything becomes an inspiration to try to figure out, what should I be doing? What makes the most sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then start trying to figure out a code for doing it. and that's a question that everybody should wake up every morning. This is a part of the code. Every morning when you wake up in this big wide world, and you say, I got to get focused on what I should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so just turn the sound off, like you don't hear no sounds at all. But just watch. You can start by doing that. Just watching what people actually do when they're sitting in a cafe, when they're going to a club. What do people actually do in a club? That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
You always ask yourself, now, is this constructive? Making sense being constructive.
Yes.
So you just watch people smoking a pipe, people, whatever they're doing. People sitting on a bench, reading a book. What's that book they're reading? And you see something about detective novel. Well, what are they trying to detect? And what are they going to do when they finish reading that book? And what did they learn in that book that needs to be done?
Mr. Fuller, and I'm going to get you your second question, Yante. What I've learned from the code is not only what to do or suggestion what to do, but simultaneously I discovered what not to do, which I found very good because I was only one way all the time. Do this, do that. But then I discovered that the code also inspired me to understand not only what to do, but what not to do. And
thousands of things.
Yes.
that you might think you need to be doing or ought to be doing or you'd get something out of doing it. When you take another look at it, it might be something, I don't need to do that at all.
Exactly.
I don't even want to do that. Where did I learn that I may want to do that? That sounds like something somebody told me. But would I do that on my own? You know?
Okay. What's your second question, Dante? Quickly.
Yeah, by the way, that's so true. For me also, realizing what not to do is just as important as as knowing what to do.
Sure,
my second question
Absolutely.
is, I know when I was growing up, I heard like people promoting that white people are devils. Is that simply not true? Do you think that that's harmful and it could cause confusion in kids who's growing up innocently hearing stuff like that? If it's simply not true, do you think that that's harmful, Mr. Fuller?
Okay, thank you, Dante.
My answer is according to the code. I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because the person, according to the code, and this is something, you know, that the code book says, the person who uses a term should explain the term that they're using to the person who is listening, because different people have different ideas about what a word means, like the word America. You know, it's an old expression. What is America to me? They even have a song that asks that question. What is America to me? The house I live in, and then it goes through a whole list of things. So it's the same way with the word devil. Depending on what religion you're in. What is a devil? Get that straight first. And and you might have 200 questions after that. What does a devil do? How do you recognize a devil? What does a devil not do? What is a devil? You might get back to that question to start with all the time. But you ask the person who uses the term. That's code.
That's code.
Whatever word a person uses, that person should explain what the word means.
Absolutely.
And I have a word guide that's full of words, and I can explain what they mean. Because they came from full.
Yes, and that term I used before about basically shadow boxing. I was looking at the code book.
And it says racial too, right?
Yeah, it was looking in the word guide right at it.
Racial shadow boxing.
Racial shadow boxing, right in the word guide, right in there. Okay, thank you, Deontay. William, we're going to get to you after we do this. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And we have about a half hour to go, so if you need to call in, you best do it, because we're getting ready to do some Gmails and get this question in here and a whole lot of good things. Talk about the book again, the Word Guide, and the two books, the 1984 edition and the 2016 edition of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, which you suggested that you probably need to get so that you understand what to do and what not to do in your combat against racism, which is white supremacy. Now, if you want to call in, you can. Here's the number, 516-453-9921. You know the drill. Push the number 1 button if you want to ask Mr. Fuller a quick question, because time is running out. You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. And when you get on that bad boy, just you want to get the programs, okay, and then shows will come up, and you want to get the Produce Justice show, and then the chat room becomes available to you. And lastly, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. More than likely, it will not be read, but I may have a chance to read a couple before we end today's programming here. Also, don't forget to get the book. Suggestion, get the book by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com, and as Mr. Fuller has stated on many occasions, The book may not necessarily be for you, but you can start anywhere in there to see if something is relevant to you. If not, but check it out and see for yourself. Okay, before we get to William in D.C., thank you, William. This comment came up from Seshat Tasfelt number 7 to Justice Warrior. He said, Mr. Fuller went to the Korean War at the same time as my biological father and uncle. My biological father was raised by a single parent, mother with 4 boys. They never grew up. Mr. Fuller grew up, and I would think that Mr. Fuller Sr. left an impression upon Mr. Fuller Jr. My biological father was basically a, quote, baby boy, end of quote. But Mr. Fuller may have been raised by, quote, Mr. Man, being Mr., end of quote, being Mr. Fuller Sr. Could be. All righty, let's go to D.C. Oh, yeah, in the district. William, what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
I just wanted to ask him, do he have any knowledge on biblical terms and biblical knowledge?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Do I have any knowledge of biblical knowledge? Is that the question?
Yes.
In other words, knowing the Bible.
Correct.
I've read some parts of the Bible down through the years, different parts. I've never read the entire Bible. That's the answer to the question.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, William. Thank you very much. Okay, as my screen is doing some crazy things to me here. Let's see here. All righty. What I'm trying to do is get to the Gmails here. And maybe I can do this here. Okay. All right, I'll do this one here. Okay, this is from Chris. It's entitled, Which Way Did the White Folks Go? Okay. It's difficult. It's a difficult... Okay, I'll just read what he said. It's a difficult read, but based on the violent history of this concept in which the white supremacists are constantly moving the goalposts, end quote, to hide the truth, we have to read and understand and expose their deeds so that we are aware of their tactics. Okay, let's see, what is the show? What is the quote here? Okay. We'll do this one here. There you go. All right. There you go. All right. Don't fuss, don't fight, don't flee. Okay, here's, let's see the quote here. Okay, I see that's not coming up here. So we'll do this one here. Maybe this one will come up. Okay, this is from Ray. It says, there is a sizable population of individuals who classify themselves as white on planet Earth that have tails, yes, tails, and or genetically relatively to other individuals who classify themselves as white who have tails. This is a fact. How can the counter-racist code be correctly applied to individuals who classify themselves as white when we may not be the same people the way that the code defines a person to be?
And how can they do this?
Yes, that's what this person is asking.
By doing it. I mean, they're here. I mean, and he said something about the questioner. Said something about white people having tails.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Okay, well, it's a person with a tail. If the person is a person, first of all, you what is a person? That would be the logical question to ask. I've never heard of a person, period, having tails. I've heard of people saying that other people had tails. I've heard it said that black people had tails, but I've never actually seen a person with a tail or talked to someone who said they actually witnessed a person with a tail. I've never talked to them. So that's information to me that there are some white people who have tails. I've been in the military where we were all naked together, white and black, and people who were called Asian, all taking showers together, all males, in a large group, in a huge shower room. But that was in the military, and I didn't see anybody with a tail. So I've never, I don't know anything about that. I've heard it. I've heard it. I've heard many down through the years, people say that black people had tails, and there were white people who were telling people who had never seen a black person naked. Like in the military, a lot of the fellows said that, the white guys go down in the village and talk to the Japanese, and they tell them Japanese women that black people, the chocolate soldiers, got tails. And so the Japanese women would ask, "Where's your tail?" All right. And so I heard many a story like that. Mm-hmm. And so, but I've never seen a person, or even seen it advertised on a billboard or anything in a circus. See, in a circus they have what they call freak people, and all like that. But I have never seen even one advertised on what they call a fairway. Come in and see the person with a tail. I've never seen that. I've never seen it even advertised as such, where I could actually pay money and go in and actually see that in a circus or in a fairground. Nor have I ever talked to anyone who said that they have actually seen it. So my answer is I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It could be. There are all kinds of things that exist on this planet and in this universe. Mm-hmm. But I've never actually seen it personally.
Okay. I was getting ready to look up something. Somebody just sent me maybe some information about that. I guess it's a vestigial tail. I'm not probably saying it right, but I don't know what that is either, Mr. Fuller. I guess there are people that actually do have one.
Yeah,
it's called a vestige. I cannot pronounce this word properly. Vestigial, tail, in humans. Then they go on to describe what it is, and some of that information is on WebMD about that. I guess they do, and I guess it can be removed, and they do have images of that. Okay. Anyway.
But as far as the code is concerned, it would just come down to the basic question. Okay, so you see a person who actually has a tail. What do you do? See, everything comes down to what you do. So how do I interact with a person, any kind of person, who has a tail? What do I do? And I recognize that as being, first of all, a person, and then a person that has a tail. Well, I've seen people with 6 fingers. I do know that. And usually that finger number 6 next to what we call the little finger would be a short stub sticking out.
Yeah, evidently, tails are
I've seen
very
that.
rare. Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. Very interesting. Okay. Question here. This comes from overseas. It says, hi. I'm not supposed to mention their name. It says, I live in the categorization of the U.S. named New England. Boy, that's not overseas. Upon my conclusion, I've decided, as Mr. Fuller has said on other podcasts, that the only categories he said white supremacists had decades ago were white, black, and mulatto. I've come to this conclusion because I've noticed that so-called Hispanics, Asians, East Indians, Arabs, etc., are either black or mulatto. I've come to this conclusion because of the pictures I've seen online of Asians being black and vice versa. The reader of this email could go to Bing, and the images are there, and search for that Asian-looking Africans. According to Mr. Fuller and the code, would this observation, Mr. Fuller, be correct? I'm 1/4 into the book. Thank you.
According to what I have written, there are three racial categories: white, non-white, and white supremacists. And of course, white people don't belong to a race. Black people don't belong to a race, except they belong under the system of a race. But they shouldn't be. White supremacist is a category, the only racial category. Other people are just colors in different shades, or non-color, which you might call white. Since in popular language, people are called colored people who have color in their skin, or you might say people of color, because nowadays the term colored people is considered, like the N-word, unacceptable. Like the word Negro, it's unacceptable. The meaning of words change over time. And what is acceptable just becomes what you call, quote, unquote, acceptable or not acceptable, depending on to whom you're talking or who is doing the talking, and whether or not people call even the word acceptable what is acceptable and what isn't. At one time, the word colored people was popular. Now it isn't. The word Negro was made unacceptable by popular use, even though there are some organizations that still use the word. The National Council of Negro Women, I think, if I got that correct, still exists. But that's because people accept it as still valid. And then there's something called the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So you got a double there.
Okay.
Colored people and advancing colored people.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. From the this was a statement made in the chat room. William Harris 6 says this: you may have a code which is like a recipe, but you need the means, money, time, and energy to implement the code. Okay. And this is from the Gmails here. TJ says this, Mr. Fuller, how should a codified victim respond to a suspected white supremacist that does not allow enough time to ask questions in a situation requiring clarity?
And how do you do what with that person?
It says, how should a codified victim respond to a suspected white supremacist that does not allow enough time to ask questions in a situation requiring clarity?
You ask the person who is not providing enough time, can you get a series of questions starting with, can we get enough time? Can I get enough time? If you're doing the person who is asking the question, you just ask that question to the person who is allowing the time. You can just simply, the code calls for you to do what? More than anything. Just ask questions. Endless questions. Put everything that you have to say. This is the best way to communicate with people. Put it in the form of a question. And you use logic when you ask a question. So if you ask yourself the question first. Am I getting enough time in this situation? So then the person who is allowing the time has the power to make the time allowable or not allowable. That's the person you logically would ask that question of. Sir, ma'am, I don't have enough time. Can you allow me to have enough time to do the things that need to be done in our communication one to another? Yes or no?
Okay.
That could be the question. But always just have a question ready. And not just one question, thousands of questions. Because of what? The laws of logic say that's how all problems are solved, if they're going to be solved at all, through the process of what? Questions and answers. How many questions and answers? As many as it takes to solve the problem.
Okay.
And that's all you got to remember. That formula is throughout the code and very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it will never fail you.
Okay.
Questions and answers. Questions and answers. The expression is, it won't take everybody where they want to go, but it will take everybody where they should be. That process. That's a guarantee.
Yes, sir.
That is a guarantee, and underline the word guarantee.
Guarantee.
Questions
yes,
and
sir.
answers will always, that's something you can absolutely rely on. But it's got to be enough questions and answers. What do you mean by enough? Enough questions, getting enough answers in order to get what is done that needs doing done.
Okay.
That's guaranteed. It will always happen.
Always happen. All righty. Final question from the Gmails here, Mr. Fuller. This comes from Resilient River. Says this. In Mr. Fuller's opinion, which current organization is following the counter-racist code closest? The Nation of Islam? Because essentially they seem to have assimilated to beat racists at their own game suited and clean cut? Mr. Fuller?
The answer is, according to the code, the organization is made up of people. That's the logic. And people, first of all, organize themselves as individuals. And how do you do that according to the code? Follow logic. So, in answer to the questions about organization, which organization? The organization is the individual person, according to the code. That's what my book is addressed to. It's not addressed to organizations. You don't try to organize something around the code. You organize yourself. You don't organize people, other people. You organize yourself by using a code. And how do you do that? Questions and answers. That is it. And follow the logic of the answers to the questions. In other words, there's an answer to every question somewhere in the universe. Get that answer. And the answer to every question will solve problems. And so if the individual person, and that's what the book is for, it's addressed to the individual person. You don't even measure people by what organization they belong to. Of course, then that does raise a question, though. What is an organization? What do people do that now call themselves something they weren't before, an organization? It means they're following some type of code. That's the logic. And what is a code? It's a way of getting things done. And how do you get things done? Questions and answers. It's called logic. That's the law of the universe. It governs everything. And logic is just the process of asking questions and getting the correct answers to the question. Because an incorrect answer to a question is not an answer to the question. That's the mathematics of the logic.
Okay.
That might be a little difficult for some people to understand because we're not used to it. But we are used to having what you call group thinking.
Yes.
But see, everybody is a group. Every individual. I mean, you're just putting things together in your head, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those things you put together in your head? It's called logic. And what is logic? Questions and answers.
Questions and answers, yes, sir.
Yeah, so anybody who asks, when you're asking a question, you are an organization, right then.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Because the answer to the question starts gravitating toward the person who asked the question. Inventors understand that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, Robert, give me about 5 minutes so Mr. Fuller can answer this last question. Mr. Fuller, last question here. This is from a Gmail. Anyway, I can't pronounce the person's name properly, but the question is, Mr. Fuller, what do we do, Mr. Fuller, when the order of the day is tacky/tragic arrangement? Seems black people and females have accepted the tackiness as the status quo. Seems black females appreciate tackiness and trashiness. They don't seem to respond to a well-mannered, logical approach. It's mostly money they respond to. If you're a male and have money, they respond to you, regardless of your mental capacity. This is why all the criminal black people get females they desire. Mr. Fuller, your response? Okay.
Yes. We are under the system of white supremacy. So all relationships, not just male-female, all relationships among black people the victims of white supremacy, and all relationships between white people and non-white people don't get any better than Tacky. It's just three ways that people interact with each other in the system of white supremacy, and that is Tacky, trashy. The system of white supremacy itself breeds trashiness. And the last one is, starting with the first one, Tacky, trashy, and I'm having a senior moment here.
Terroristic?
Terroristic, right. The three T's. Tacky, trashy, and terroristic. That's how black people interact with each other. That's how white people, in one form or another, spread it. All relationships. Now, the white supremacists see to it that it's going to be definitely among non-white people, tacky, trashy, and terroristic. So it's not black females, it's all people in the system of white supremacy. Our interaction with white people is as tacky as it can be.
Okay.
The way, the way we pretend and we all go into some type of act. See, white people don't interact with black people the same way they interact with white people, same way with black people. We interact with white people differently.
Okay.
But it doesn't get any better than tacky.
Okay.
And if you try to improve on the tackiness, as the code book says, then it gets into something trashy.
Yeah, then it gets in there. Okay.
Yeah, whether it's white or black.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to improve on the tackiness, which means everybody's acting, it's a phony act. That's what white supremacy does to people. Everybody's just as phony as they can be. Phony.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not honest with each other at all. Nowhere near that.
Okay.
We got something up our sleeves, or we think that the other person has. That's tacky.
Okay. Well, we got to leave it there. So we thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank everybody else for listening. We made a lot of mistakes today, but we'll try to do better. Thank you, Robert, for giving me the extra few minutes. Everybody have a good week. And remember, ProduceJustice.com is where you get the book. Mr. Fuller, the final word to you.
ProduceJustice.com. Get the book and try to go from there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.